And if the judges will please introduce themselves.
Hello. My name is Miriam Amarsadeghi, and I participated in We the People the very first year was offered on the bicentennial of the U.S. Constitution many years ago, and I'm happy to serve as a board member of the Center for Civic Education. I've spent a large part of my career focused on providing civic education to people living in the Middle East, particularly Iran, where I'm originally from.
And good morning. My name is Tanya McConnell. I spent about 20 years as a professor of history at Columbia College in South Carolina. Lived about 10 years in North Carolina, in Charlotte, which I believe, where are y'all from? What part of?
Raleigh.
That sounds so southern there. Where are y'all from? A wonderful place to be. Raleigh's a wonderful city. Right now, a few years ago, I decided to do something different with my life. So right now I am teaching high school history in Columbia, South Carolina, and I am honored to be here with you guys.
All right, I'm Michael DePura. I'm coming from Tallahassee, Florida. I work with the state of Florida with the Department of Education. You can see behind me, it's actually a picture, but it's a picture of our state capitol complex looking out of the Department of Education building onto the complex. So I guess it's almost like I took the photo myself, which I did. Anyway, it's here nor there. I'm so glad to be here, and I'm so glad to see a team from a city I've been to. So Raleigh, really cool, beautiful city.
Yes, it is a beautiful city. Go ahead and introduce yourselves, please. Looking forward to hearing about you.
Hello, my name is Emery Hill.
My name is Jed McNeese.
I'm Margot Buchanan. We're seniors at Raleigh Charter High School, and Miss Klein is our teacher.
Great. Well, congrats to you guys. Congrats to your teacher for being here. This is a big deal, and like I said, I think we're all honored to be with you. So it's Unit 1, Philosophical and Historical Foundations of the American Political System. The question today is the second one. Parliament passed the Habeas Corpus Act of 1679. What is habeas corpus, and to what extent, if any, is it essential to the principle of limited government? How has the writ of habeas corpus evolved in the United States? Under what circumstances, if any, might the writ of habeas corpus place an unreasonable burden on the government? Please begin.
During the Civil War, Maryland legislator John Merriman was detained at a Union fort for trying to hinder the movement of Union troops. His attorney sought a writ from the government explaining his detention, known as a writ of habeas corpus, but Lincoln denied the request, arguing that habeas corpus can be suspended during wartime. This resulted in the Supreme Court case Ex parte Merriman, in which Chief Justice Taney argued that because habeas corpus falls under Article 1 of the Constitution, the power to suspend it is only given to Congress. Lincoln ignored this recommendation, and the matter has never been officially resolved despite reappearing in future Supreme Court cases.
Since then, our interpretation has evolved significantly. The most recent reevaluation occurring in 2008 in Bowman v. Bush, where the Supreme Court ruled that all detainees held on U.S.-controlled land had the right to habeas corpus. This decision still stands today, indicating the substantial impact that the War on Terror had on our perception of habeas corpus. However, between the Civil War and the War on Terror, the court re-examined the issue multiple times.
Over 800 years before Bowman v. Bush, the Magna Carta introduced habeas corpus to English law to limit the British monarchy. 500 years later, English philosopher John Locke's political philosophy elaborates on the concept that habeas corpus is essential to limited government. According to Locke, unlimited government is one that protects the natural rights of the citizens, life, liberty, and property, without interfering with other aspects of life. It protects both the natural right to liberty and happiness and prevents the indefinite enslavement of citizens by the government.
Additionally, Locke states in his two treatises that the government should act only to further the public good, and thus should not kill or enslave citizens. This logically extends to detainment without just cause. Habeas corpus is a long-standing part of English law, so in 1787, when the Constitution was written, it was considered a fundamental right by the colonists.
Habeas corpus has been defined through Supreme Court cases decided during times of national and international conflict, beginning with the Civil War. In the decades following Ex parte Merriman, there were multiple Supreme Court cases clarifying the scope of habeas corpus. During World War II, Johnson v. Eisentrager ruled that non-resident enemies do not have access to U.S. courts during wartime, and that the Constitution does not protect them. This decision was then reversed in 2004 in Raleigh v. Bush, when the Supreme Court decided that habeas corpus extended to all detainees, citizen and non-citizen alike, held in Guantanamo Bay. Several months later, Hamdi v. Rumsfeld went on to limit this decision, arguing that the government has the power to detain all enemy combatants, but only U.S. citizens have the right to habeas corpus. The Military Commissions Act was then passed in 2006 to help enforce these decisions, bringing us back to Bowman v. Bush in 2008, limiting the power of the MCA.
There are absolutely no circumstances which upholding the writ of habeas corpus places an undue burden on the government. While there are valid arguments that their refusal to suspend it may leave our country vulnerable to attacks and put our information at risk, we still must consider the consequences of abandoning habeas corpus during a time of crisis. When citizens are told they may be imprisoned or detained without an explanation, the trust between the populace and the government is severed.
Clearly then, upholding the writ of habeas corpus is no undue burden. In fact, it is crucial to preserving the principles that our country is founded upon and to maintaining the strength of our country in the face of adversity. Despite numerous court cases and widespread bipartisan support, inmates are still being denied habeas corpus at Guantanamo Bay. If we wish to protect this fundamental right, we must address the situation as the violation that it is and prove to the government that habeas corpus is never too much of a burden.
Okay, thank you. I want to ask you guys about habeas corpus and how it sort of defines our national strength. Do you think that these protections, these legal guarantees make us a stronger country? When you compare to a place like China, obviously also a very, very strong economy, strong military, do you think that these protections give us an edge or are they a handicap?
Sorry, I'd argue that it was an edge. I would say it certainly is. China is certainly very strong economically, politically, all sorts of things, but the edge in this situation is in the trust between the people and the government. Our connection between the populace, of course, the rulers, the government, is much, much stronger than compared to, say, China. Sure, well, there's a lot of power in China's government. The people, oftentimes upon leaving, have sort of negative feelings about the government. Now, I'd hope to say that that is not exactly the case with our country.
Also, I believe the same as Jeb. I think it's definitely an edge, and I believe it's something that we should be really proud of. When we mentioned the limitations that habeas corpus could potentially place on us in times of crisis, I think that as we said in our paper, having habeas corpus in place far outweighs those potential negative impacts because it gives us something to fight for. Habeas corpus is the thing that protects all of our most fundamental rights. So if we abandon habeas corpus and the government was allowed to detain us for, say, speaking out against the government and didn't have to give a just reason for our detainment, then suddenly all of these fundamental rights that we have and that we place great significance on are suddenly thrown into question. And so I believe that habeas corpus is something that limits the government and thus protects our freedom, which again is a huge, huge edge over somewhere like China, where, like Jeb said, trust between the government and the people isn't necessarily as strong.
So bringing this into a modern context, can you provide any examples, if any, that habeas corpus should be suspended? And, I'll add on to that to maybe get you going. Do you agree with the Supreme Court decision that prisoners in Guantanamo Bay deserve habeas corpus?
I would say that I do agree that prisoners held in Guantanamo Bay deserve habeas corpus. Some of them are U.S. citizens and hold dual citizenship, and some of them are not. And by denying all of them habeas corpus, we're setting an example for the country that does not lend itself to trust in the government. As we said in our paper, I really think that there aren't situations in which the US government should suspend habeas corpus. I think there are times when there might be questions of national security or speed in detaining someone, but I think, as Jeb and Emery talked about in the last answer, that habeas corpus is really essential to maintaining trust and pride in our country. And by taking that away, I think that is a huge detriment.
I agree with Margot, and I think that, kind of as we mentioned, the US has one of the strongest militaries in the world. And so a small military setback to one of the strongest militaries, I think, isn't as important, as Margot said, as the detriment of taking away these fundamental freedoms are, because if we throw away habeas, then what are we fighting for?
What are the practical consequences of a suspension of habeas corpus? I mean, what would happen if the government were to say, as in the case of the Merriman case, okay, you're arrested, it's okay, and we're going to suspend your right of habeas corpus, then what? What happens next?
So I think there will be a tremendous amount of trust lost in the citizens. A lot of fear will be struck in the hearts of everyone because you have no clue what's going to happen. You might be detained. You may not know why. So if we are in like the face of a threat, the fear might shift from the enemy, whatever it may be, to our own government, because now we have to fear them as well. We can't predict what they're going to do. There's no rhyme or reason to being detained anymore. So that does occur. And then, of course, the trust between politicians and citizens. Why would you listen to a politician that's decided that you can be detained for any reason, and it's not even being worth telling you why? There'd be no trust between the citizens and the government, and a lot of fear as well.
I think another thing that could occur using the Civil War as maybe more of an extreme example is states start to feel like they no longer want to be a part of this government that has denied them habeas corpus. So as we saw the secession of most of the southern states in the Civil War, I think that's one path that we could go down if we were to suspend habeas corpus.
Could a state suspend habeas corpus under certain circumstances, even if the federal government could not?
I personally don't think so, because habeas corpus is listed in the national constitution. So I think that it is a national right, so a state individually could not suspend it. And also, according to Supreme Court rulings, although it's not super clear, either Congress or the president are given the power to suspend habeas corpus, but not lower governments such as the state governments.
So if a state could arrest someone, how long can, I mean, police arrest people all the time, and then let's go, how long should you be able to be held before you're either charged or released? I mean, can we hang on to you for 6 months before we decide what we're going to charge you with, or 6 years, or 6 hours? What should that limit be then? Because habeas corpus assumes people get arrested.
I mean, I would love to see something like 30 days or a month or 2 months, something of that nature. But it's less about, the specific number of days or months, but more that it's being done as quickly as possible. I mean, things build up and things are hard to, be economical with your time, such as like a huge city or government. It is challenging. But the goal is that it's done as quickly as possible, whether that be 30 days, 2 months, 3 months, maybe 6 months, if that's what the case is. I would certainly hope not. But the point is that it's done as quickly as is possible.
And I also think that your question pertains maybe less to habeas corpus and more towards the Sixth Amendment, which guarantees a speedy and public trial. So I think habeas corpus and the Sixth Amendment work hand in hand there, ensuring that people are not held in jail indefinitely. I agree completely with what Jeb said, that the time itself doesn't necessarily matter as long as it's being done as quickly as possible.
Okay, because trials are quite often delayed for months and years, can we legitimately hold someone in prison, especially if they cannot afford bail for months on end? Because they've been offered bail, they've been offered the right of habeas corpus, they just don't have any money to bail themselves out. Is that a legitimate workaround for habeas corpus?
Time.
And we're saved from that one.
Okay, fantastic. Well, you guys were agile, you were supportive of each other, you worked well as a team, you knew the material in and out, you were comfortable in applying it. And I think our questions tried to get you to do that. You just have a lot to be proud of. I think it really showed a tremendous amount of work, and this was not your average year. So it's clear that you worked a lot as individuals, but you are a real team. And the team cohesion showed, even though it's virtual and even though we had the year that we had. So congrats to you, and congrats to your teacher too.
It was very lawyerly of you, Margot, to reframe the question as a Sixth Amendment question rather than a habeas corpus question. You know, I don't know how this applies or not, but I'm thinking of current events and the state of New York. I think it was like a New York City justice or something, I don't know, suspending habeas corpus. So that is interesting to see how it does affect the local level. And I don't know enough about it to speak on it because you guys are the smart ones here and ladies. But it may be just an interesting internet search to follow up on about New York suspending that. And then as we wrap this up, I know Miriam's leading, she's probably going to ask this. So let Tandy go. I'll give it back to Miriam after all that. But I do want to know where you're all going to college after all of this.
I thought bringing in the Sixth Amendment was absolutely the right way to do that. But it also does open up that next question. There are thousands of people in prison in America awaiting trial. They're sometimes for minor crimes because they don't have the money to bail themselves out. The writ of habeas corpus pretty much just does not apply to them. The government, so I think that's where these stories get extremely messy for us as we're trying to create a just society, but we live in a messy world. And so I really, really enjoyed the conversation with you. Wonderful job, wonderful conversation.